Having me. My name is Dominic Lucia. I'm a solutions engineer. I usually speak with channel resellers and customers over on the West Coast, but I am filling in a pinch here for the federal team. And today we're going to be talking about the NGINX controller. The NGINX product line is a pretty sophisticated and deep product line. The product does quite a bit of things, and I know that as we've seen over the past couple of weeks, you can see exactly how deep that rabbit hole goes. So hopefully today, controller will show you a bit of an easy button that could be a shortcut to adopting NGINX. Standard format for today, as with the last several sessions. We're just going to hit the previous topics to kind of review what we've seen over the last couple of months, and then get into actually talking about today's topic. So Lyle, I don't know if you want to speak to this. I've only been on the last 3 or 4. I'm relatively new to the company, so if you want to hit these.
Yeah. I won't go through each of them in detail, but we've been doing these webinar Wednesdays for several weeks now, almost 3 months. So these are some of the topics that we've already discussed and talked about. And they're all, most of them, I should say, are uploaded to the F5 Government Solutions YouTube website. So if you want to watch any of these, that's where they're located. And if you have any questions or anything comes up during the presentation, please take advantage of the chat, and we'll be monitoring that if you have any questions. So
cool.
Yep.
So for the specific presentation that's specific to the controller, like I said, NGINX Plus and NGINX are pretty complicated. And so for people who may have been here during the last several weeks, I really want to make sure that we're all on the same footing, so that when we get on to the more abstract things that talk about, hey, this is how NGINX plugs into controller, or this is how it's going to plug into the rest of your infrastructure, you're not left thinking like, okay, wait, but what does NGINX do exactly again? So a real quick refresher on NGINX Plus, and then we'll talk about controller and how that can actually make things a lot more easier and streamlined. And then I'll go ahead and show you the demo of the environment. So it was funny when I was looking to come over to NGINX. One of the questions that I like to ask in my research process is, what's your favorite thing about selling NGINX? And then, what's the hardest thing about working with NGINX? And the answer was almost always, well, the product does a lot. And once I actually ended up joining the company, I realized that I had no idea how deep that rabbit hole went. The go-to analogy for everybody that I'd been talking to was, oh, NGINX, it's a multi-tool. It's like a Swiss Army knife. It can do anything. And once I saw how NGINX could be used to actually build infrastructure, I thought that it was a little bit, the analogy of a multi-tool was a little bit of a miss, because you can't really build stuff out of like wrenches and hammers. So I like to think of NGINX as more of a universal building block. So if you picture NGINX, if you conceptualize it as kind of a magic Lego, that if you take this Lego and you can kind of whisper some incantations, and it will transform into any of these different size bricks. You can develop anything from just a regular app server to a load balancer. And this is how we conceptualize chaining together these services so that you can have a really robust microservices infrastructure built off of something like NGINX. So again, it does a whole bunch of different things. It does all of these things on the left, and it does all of them extremely well. People use NGINX just for any one of those different things on the left. or any combination of those things. So you can separate these things out so that, okay, well, this node is just going to be a load balancer, and then the next node that it'll talk to will just do API gateway authorization, and so on. Or you can have, layers of services and different planes that actually have multiple different uses of the same node. So multiple functions in the same node, sort of like what you see here. And this is all about how we get our code from the application out to the customer. So it's what we think of as application delivery. So then what is NGINX Controller? NGINX Controller is also a bunch of totally different things. This slide is really just meant to look confusing because it, again, does a ton of different stuff. It plugs into NGINX in a bunch of different ways. So I'm going to try and make it a little bit more simple. NGINX Controller is one of two things, and it can also be kind of a combination of those two things. But in general, we see it as this organization will use it for NGINX as an easy button, and this organization or part of the organization or team will use it as a path to modernize their app, and so on. Once you start to think of it as these two things, it's really because we want to start with the app, and you can leverage it. You can leverage NGINX to deliver, like I said, build those different Legos and then deliver your code from the app to the customer. Oops, there we go. This had some more revealing icons on it, but you can see how there's just a ton of different places where this can fit in. We can be an NGINX ingress controller for a Kubernetes cluster. You can then stack on top of that, reverse proxies and load balancers and everything. So when you start with the idea of trying to get some sort of functionality out from the brains of your product managers and developers to the customer, it has to go through all these different chains. And when you want to make a change to that app, again, it's going to have to, maybe in order to reveal that feature, you're going to have to tweak some iRules or tweak some part of the application delivery chain to actually deliver that feature, even though you may have the app already delivered. If you want to go and add a checkbox or a drop-down menu that's some kind of new feature for that app, you're going to have to make all these changes along the code path to actually deliver it out to the customer. So what did that mean before? In the case of NGINX, that meant comp files. So, there's a lot of stuff on the internet about how to make NGINX really sing as far as being a super lightweight, highly optimized piece of software. And it's been around just long enough to be very, very modern. But it's also, as far as web servers go, is actually the most common web server in the top websites on the internet. So I believe it's something like 40% of the major internet. I'm talking about everything from corporate websites to consumer websites. The actual backend web server is very, very frequently, almost always NGINX. It's more common than Microsoft. It's now more common than Apache. So there's a really deep brain trust of help out there you can get to actually deploy NGINX, but it can be really confusing. Combine that with what we are used to from F5. So we have iRules and VIPs and everything else. This is how people are used to delivering kind of more of a siloed approach to app delivery. So NGINX is typically kind of the DevOps AppDev side. And then we've got NetOps and what we call kind of super NetOps that are utilizing some of the more sophisticated F5 features. But this all can start to be really confusing. And when you go back to how do I get that app concept from the, the mind of the developer, and then deploy that feature so that your customer can actually use it, your end user can use it. It's much more of the paradigm of thinking about the app and app-centric is just much more clean. So if we think about the app, that's what's important. All the infrastructure and all of the technical stuff is just there to facilitate getting this functionality to your customer. So NGINX Controller is built to be app-centric. If you see down the side here on the left, you've got, a list of different apps, a list of different environments. This is all, again, centered on the app, centered on the functionality of what's going on. It's not as much just the bits and bytes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut over the demo, and I'm going to look at it from two different ways. The first is the DevOps engineer, and she is going to be signified by the darker window. It's going to be an incognito window, and I'll keep touching on that to make sure that we remind you of that. And then over here, we'll have the IT network engineer who has mostly been responsible for the infrastructure and who still has all the keys to the kingdom, but is trying to start to break down silos and work with teams so that they can enable self-service, so that DevOps engineers like Samantha on the retail team can start to deliver those apps more themselves. And you don't get the shoelaces tied together of one team waiting for another to deploy different functionality. So give me one moment here. Okay. Okay. This says my screen sharing is paused. Can you see my remote desktop connection, Lyle, or does it look like PowerPoint still?
I can see PowerPoint. It just looks like PowerPoint with the two personas.
Okay, interesting. Let me stop share and then restart it. Okay, how about now?
That's better.
Perfect. Yep. Okay, cool. So what we're talking about today is going to be a faux trading application. So, let's say that this is acmefinancial.net. They call this their Arcadia application, and they want to be able to deliver features very, very quickly out to their users. So you can see right now that there's a lot of coming soon. Move some Zoom windows around here. All of these different things are they're coming soon features, and they're starting to get outmaneuvered by their competition. They have users that are like, hey, my friend could do X, Y, and Z functionality over on their banking website. I'm thinking about moving from Acme Financial over to this other service. So again, notice I'm talking mostly about the app, and we're going to try and keep that in focus for the rest of the demo. When you first open up the UI, this is what you're presented with. So, you've got a very, very high level user-centric. Okay, there's a little bit of stuff here about, CPU usage and traffic, but the rest of it is focused on, what is the user seeing? We've got a lot of users. There are some errors, but, in general, we've got response times, we've got a health score, and it's really focused on the actual user app delivery. So switching over to our admin here, it looks the same. So this is the guy that actually owns the entire infrastructure, right? And this is going to be, remember the incognito window is Samantha, and this is the DevOps engineer view. So she only has access to her environments, right? She might have read access to some of the prod environments to see when she deploys code or when her code is deployed, how is that looking in production? But in general, she has read and write access only to the dev lower environments. So to show you that contrast, I'm going to go down here to services. I'll also go to services on Samantha's screen. And you can see here that we've got a nice role-based access schema here. For David, the IT owner, he's got access to prod and dev. You can see all these different aspects of the production environment. And you can also see the developer environment down here, whereas Samantha only has access to the development environment. So again, it starts on an AppCentric view. If you want to go and look at environments, you can. So you can start to look at it from more of a mixture of the infrastructure / app view. So we've got the prod environment, we've got the dev environment. On Samantha's side, again, just the dev environment. I also don't have the chat window up. Are there any questions so far?
Not yet.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so you can see, again, David's got access to all these different prod and dev environments. Samantha here only has access to the app, the dev apps. And what we want to do is we actually want to launch a new feature. So again, in the interest of self-service, and Samantha's team wants to run as fast as they can, right? They don't want to have to file a ticket and then wait for David's team to get to that ticket and ask some questions back and forth. Like, they want to be able to deploy this stuff, but they also don't want to have to deploy this stuff hacking a bunch of conf files, logging into a bunch of F5 big IP interfaces, and controlling each link in the chain like that. So NGINX Controller has the ability to take care of all those links in the chain automatically, again, as kind of an easy button for NGINX. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to launch this new trading function that we were talking about. The customer saying, hey, my friend is able to do this on his app, and so I'm thinking about switching over. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the trading app and launch the new feature, launch the new code that Samantha's developer team has already written and tested. And now we're going to deploy it to the development environment. So I'm going to create a new component because we're going to call this feature a component. I'm going to name it here. We'll just call it trading transfers. And we'll call the name of the component trading component. Now, all of this stuff, as you can see, is optional. And in the interest of making this as much of an easy button as possible, we can just click next through here. We can also next through this one. We are going to have to figure out a way to deliver it. I'm going to click on the trading.acmefinancial.net gateway. I'm going to have to add a place for where this code is actually going to be accessible to the client, so that where they can actually access the API. So I'm going to make this, again, since it's trading.acmefinancial, I'm going just to make this /API. And we do need a place to actually run this workload. So in the workload group, we've been told by David that the servers in the data center are going to be app2 servers, and those you can see when David was asked the question like, hey, where do our workloads run? If we do really quickly switch back to the infrastructure view here, you can see that there are servers on this side, and you can see the dev NGINX servers. So you can look at their, hold on one sec. You can see we've got just critical stats about those here. And so we're going to put in information for one of those servers. So the workload, let's see here. There we go, workload URI. So those are the only things that were required. And so now we've got a workload group that we've configured and set up. That'll be the only time that we have to configure and set up that workload group. Once that's actually done, we're able to just reuse that. And pretty much from there on out, none of this other stuff is really truly necessary. So, with just a couple of pieces of information about where this stuff needed to go, we're actually able to hopefully deploy that feature. So again, we've hidden all of the app development. So that's all gone down kind of behind the scenes, or as I called it, kind of before the pull request. Now we need a way to actually deploy it. And with just a couple of clicks and a couple of pieces of information, we've now got this trading transfers where we can, basically instantaneous functionality. So so that's pretty cool. Are there any questions about what I've done so far?
Yeah, I think we're good so far, Dominic.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so I do want to just take a real quick look at some of the other things that NGINX Controller can do. Again, if you're only going to take away one thing from this webinar on what NGINX Controller is and what it can do, just think of very simple point and click app delivery. That's really what we try and communicate is the big value of the feature. It does give you that monitoring. There are customers of NGINX Controller that find a ton of value because they've got these NGINX deployments that they've got it plugged into Datadog, they've got it plugged into Splunk, but they also wanted some sort of centralized management and centralized just monitoring. So some customers literally just use NGINX Controller and find the value in just having monitoring. You can create custom dashboards with I want to be able to look at what are the latencies to the clients, what are the latencies to the backend servers, how are all those pieces of the infrastructure behaving. It gives you a good handle on that. You can set up alerts as well, but I actually like to look here at the events as far as something to be able to traverse all the different NGINX nodes and look at what are the different things that are coming through. You can see that the WAF functionality has been enabled on the trading main. So this is the production production instance, and there's somebody trying to enact cross-site scripting attacks, it's a good view for your infrastructure from that side. I'm going to pop back down into services and give you a little bit more of a look at what this looks like. I went directly to apps and I just deployed that new part of the app, but there is a lot more here. So we'll go into the production side. Again, it presents you with a nice view of, hey, everything looks pretty good. That is quite a few HTTP 500 errors, so you should probably look into that. Overviews of performance. And from here, you can take a look at everything in the environment, from which apps are actually being served in this environment to, there's certificate management. Again, a lot of companies just use NGINX Controller to manage the certs in their NGINX environment, because expiring certs are still a pain to wrangle all these things. This is that AppCentric view. You can still dig down into each one and then say, okay, well, what are all the things that make up this app? So now I'm in the Service Center app, but what are the different things that this app does? And I can look at all these different components. If we switch back over to Arcadia, you can see where some of these components actually manifest in the actual user interface. This is just another way to look at that from an app-centric view rather than from an infrastructure-centric view. We do have, as an integral part of NGINX Plus, the JOT authentication, the Java Web Token authentication can be a really big problem for developers who are trying to develop a secure application, but don't want to wrangle all of their authentication and put all that code into their code. We can have NGINX Plus just take care of the JOT authentication itself. That way, you can silo that, not silo. You can separate that off. You can do a division of labor where you have, just the JOT team taking care of authentication, and then the other teams can use that as a bit of a service. And NGINX Plus enables that because we support the JOT authentication at that middle layer, that application delivery layer, that allows it for all the applications behind it to actually use JOT authentication for all of the clients that connect to it. The last thing that I wanted to show was just that infrastructure, the infrastructure overview. So, we can take a look at, this is all of the pieces of infrastructure and what they're doing. Are they healthy or not? Load averages are all pretty well below 1. That's good. This is probably when I made that deployment a few minutes ago. So there was a spike there in usage, but other than that, we've got pretty healthy statistics, and all of this stuff it just looks healthy. This is the last piece of really useful functionality that the controller gives you. This is an NGINX config analyzer. So what this does is it takes something like your NGINX conf file, and in organizations that have really adopted microservices, have really gone towards this, software delivered applications where you've got chains of NGINX and you've got all these different network diagrams pointing to everything else, and it can be a big string of confusingness sometimes. These conf files can actually get really sizable. So when you go in and you ask, hey, what are all of the things that this NGINX node is configured to do. That is essentially just printing out its conf file. And you do that by doing an NGINX dash capital T, and that dumps the whole config file. It's really it's analogous to doing like a show run on a Cisco router. And that gives you the whole config. Even for somebody that's very seasoned at using and administering NGINX, it can be a little bit daunting. So we have this tool that actually allows you to click on a server, and not only does it tell you some really basic stats about, okay, what is the actual build? How old is it? R22 is the latest, so that's great. So we know that we're updated. But then let me go back to a more interesting one. The static analysis shows you, okay, what is everything in this config file? What's it actually doing? Where are all these things pointing? Where are the URIs pointing to which backends? How is this traffic routed at a layer 7 level? And do all these regexes and rules make sense? And it shows you a nice, like, hey, you might want to check this or that. You might want to check how, there's some warnings here. You might want to look into that. And then again, it gives you some really high level information about your security status. So SSL, are you running the right version? Do you have any that are expired, or any certificates that look to have some issues? And they'll actually also tell you about specific security vulnerabilities or advisories that we know about, that we want to let you know about, that are in possibly in your infrastructure. So I think that is about it. Controller is a pretty straightforward product. Again, it's really just trying to make it be an easy button to deliver NGINX. And I hope that you have found that to be helpful today.
So Dominic, thank you. This was great. One of the things that kind of came to mind is this is one of these products that F5 and NGINX seem to be iterating pretty quickly on. So can you give us a feel for how quickly new features and new releases are coming out with this product?
Yeah, it's really fast. It's not quite as fast as AppProtect, but it's definitely fast enough that there is a business unit of NGINX specialists. So my job is to know F5 enough to know how NGINX plugs into it, but mostly my job is just to know the NGINX stuff. And even we have a hard time keeping up sometimes on exactly what's coming down the pipe, because things are coming so fast and furious. A lot of what we're seeing with the controller product, the two pieces that I see that have the most development, that are going the fastest, seem to be having to do with the security, so plugging into NGINX App Protect, and then also the API management. So there's a dev portal coming out. There's ways that you can actually brand and have your own developer portal, so that when you bring on a new developer into your team, you can actually show them, okay, here's, I'm not just going to give you the endpoint list, the printout of all the different endpoints, but I can actually show you a map of how all these APIs plug into each other. So those are the two places where we're seeing the most progress being made the most quickly.
Right. Okay. Monitoring the chat. I don't see any questions. If anyone has any last minute questions for myself or Dominic, please post them now. Otherwise, that concludes today's webinar. One thing to keep in mind: so next Wednesday, the NGINX kind of theme continues, and we're going to be talking about container ingress services for Kubernetes. So that's going to be next Wednesday. And it takes, I'm going to say it takes about 24 to 36 hours for the the content to be posted up on the YouTube channel that I posted earlier. So if you want to review this presentation, it should be up there sometime late tomorrow. So actually, yeah. So next week, it's actually a lab. So that'll be so you'll be able to get hands-on with CIS. So thank you again, Dominic. I really appreciate it. And if anybody has any last-minute questions, please post them. Otherwise, I think we're good to go. Okay.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Yep. Thanks again, Dominic.
Thanks a lot, Lyle. Have a good one.
Bye.